Nice to have you with me here on The Doctor Is In.
You have always been a voice of reason through all of this.
Appreciate your time, what you're doing for America.
I give you advice, and it doesn't work at all.
You are definitely not inept by any means.
I like to hear women say that about me.
Whatever advice you're going to send my way, I am 100% taking it.
I can't tell you what to do. I will not tell you what to do.
Okay. Well, thanks.
That wasn't the answer I wanted.
Are you kidding me?
Great stuff, Dr. Ray. I'm glad I called.
I've scheduled my day around listening to your radio show.
You don't have to laugh so hard.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Hope I can make it through the show today. I didn't get much sleep last night. I'm not coming in here to initially start complaining, but I know how they say your mind gets occupied as you're trying to go to sleep. I was looking up at the ceiling, and we have one of those encapsulated, closed covers over our light, our ceiling light. As best I can tell, that cover butts the ceiling. And yet, there was a moth in there fluttering around. I'm not afraid of a moth fluttering around, but I started thinking, how did he, and I know that's gender assuming, it could be a female moth, get in there? And I pondered that for the next hour, hour and a half. And one might think that's kind of a trivial waste of time. However, it infected me. So I'm trying to be a little more energetic today. It's not going to come as natural. That's what happened last night. This is E-Person Monday. E-Person is a variant of The Doctor Is In. Most Mondays, we lay them aside. Well, see how I include you? That's forced. It's what it's called forced teaming. We lay them aside. That's really a dumb thing to do when you're writing a book, too. As we discussed last chapter. No, we didn't really discuss last chapter. As last chapter recounted, or as I said last chapter, is certainly the more accurate, and I dare say more humble way to say it. So, let me correct myself. Rather than saying we lay aside Mondays for our E-persons who come in, I lay aside. Now, I could say we because Andrew Kruchek is involved. He's my producer man there at Ave. So today, we're going to, he and I, we, not me and you, we, are going to tackle those E-persons very shortly. The experts in a lot of ways have dramatically complicated parenting. They get parents to overthink. And the irony is, it's the parents who are really pretty decent parents who overthink. Somebody who is neglectful in parenting, or nasty, or abusive, or could care less about how they're raising their kids, they don't pay much attention to the experts. You notice that? The irony is the people who care want to do it, quote-unquote, right, as though there now is a standard as given by the self-anointed experts. Now, one of the things that's happening is that parents are more nervous about some of the normal abnormalities that their kids pull. Kids pull stunts. They do. They do all kinds of quirky, odd, eccentric, inexplicable stuff. That is the normal process of growing up. And in most times past, people recognized that. They had kind of an instinct about kids. They recognized that happens. Now, maybe part of it was they had a lot more kids those days. Now we get one or two. But they understood that kids were capable by their immaturity, by their impulse, by their lack of morality. They could do these kinds of things. And it didn't mean they were pathological. It didn't mean there was something wrong with them psychologically. Well, now, one of the most common questions I get, a parent will describe something a kid does, and the next question will be, is that something I should worry about? Is that normal? What do you think it means? And much of the time, me being a highly paid professional, I'll say, I don't know. Let's talk about it. But the one thing I do know is that these kinds of oddities, these inexplicable pieces of kidhood, are pretty normal. Only in the past 30, 40, 50 years of expert-driven psychological correctness have parents become nervous when a kid does something or acts a certain way. Let me give you a small example. Your 6-year-old goes with you to the drugstore. He likes being with you. Sweet kid. You come home, and you notice he's got this little car. Where'd that come from? You didn't buy him that car. He pilfered it. He saw it, he put it in his coat pocket, and he walked out. Now, what are you thinking? He knows stealing is wrong. Why is he doing this? Where did that come from? We've talked about this. We've talked about the commandments, thou shalt not steal. Am I not getting through? Is there something about him that just leans towards this? And he stole a Matchbox Corvette. Does that mean he's going to steal a real Corvette when he's 19? Probably not. He saw the car. It was red. It was his favorite color. He liked it. He took it. Okay, so we're going to take it back. He's going to get disciplined. It's probably a one-off. I think about every kid is going to steal something growing up. It's typical. Or a kid who, for the first time at age 9, looks you dead in the face and flagrantly lies. He's never lied before. He's always had this beyond his age formed conscience. But now it didn't even seem to bother him. He didn't flinch. If I didn't know better, if I didn't have it on tape through our whole house camera system, I'd be convinced he's so good. Where's his conscience? Did it fracture? What's happening? Not necessarily at all. He's 9. And maybe he just got the inkling that you're not omniscient. You don't know everything. And he knows the corners of the house where the cameras don't reach. Oh, no. That means he's calculating. He's kind of like a budding criminal. Criminals do that. I'll bet he... You know what I'll bet he did? I'll bet he took his dad's sunglasses, put them on, and put a ball cap over his head and pushed it down so the cameras couldn't catch most of his face. I'll bet he did. Okay, so this was not impulse. This was premeditation. Yeah. Pretty slick, really. That's okay. You're going to deal with it. The key is, does something become a pattern? Pattern of lying, pattern of stealing, pattern of tormenting his sister. Despite, now here's the difference. Yes, he torments his sister constantly, Ray, so there, what are you saying? Yeah, but despite the fact that you've disciplined it, and you've disciplined it well. There's the difference. As my 10 kids grew up, and I wrote a book just recently called Taught by 10, Psychologist's Father Learns from His 10 Children, I saw they could do all kinds of scrap. Totally unexpected, unanticipated. No way I could have prepared myself for it. Never saw it coming. Had to be dealt with. Post-fact. Couldn't deal with it pre-fact because didn't even think it would happen. But it did. Don't you sin? Don't you do things you really shouldn't do? And you're grown up. And you're supposed to be mature, and you're supposed to have a decent conscience, and you're supposed to be socialized. So we look at little kids, and they pull stunts, which many parents used to understand were stunts. They weren't rife with psychological meaning. You didn't have to go scouring for what was underneath it all to make them be this way. Don't mishear me. I'm not saying you look at this from this perspective with all stunts. No, sometimes you can probe for a meaning, you can probe for some causes that are ulterior, you don't know what they are. But most of the time when you get these isolated kidhood pieces of impulsivity or immorality, that's just what they are. But he's never done this before. Well, has he ever been 10 before? I can't believe he's throwing a fit like that. He never threw fits. Yeah, well, has he ever been 4 before? So much comes because of their age. Recognize that, too. You can drive yourself crazy overanalyzing all this stuff. You'll be a more relaxed parent if you recognize the reality, which is kids pull a lot of scrap. I'm Dr. Ray.
We'll return after these messages.
Looking for a retreat venue for your youth group, sports team, ministry, or staff event? St. Francis Retreat Center in DeWitt sits on a picturesque 95-acre property, complete with 3 large conference rooms, 2 chapels, 2 dining rooms with commercial kitchens, meeting spaces for smaller groups, overnight lodging, and a professional staff to make your event a success. Call 517-669-8321 or visit stfrancis.ws to book your event today.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
This week on Christ is the Answer, we continue Father John's series on the 10 Commandments. After freeing the Hebrews from slavery in Egypt, the Lord gave Moses the new rule to which the people of God would abide as part of the new covenant. The most recognizable of these rules are the 10 Commandments. Join us this week as Father John expounds on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Commandments and asking the question, why be good? Tune in for Christ is the Answer, Monday through Fridays at 11 a.m. on Ave Maria Radio.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
Thank you for joining me, Dr. Ray Guarendi here, Program Doctors In, variant of the program Be Person Monday. Let's see what we got here. Hi, Dr. Ray. You mentioned that you're working on a book about anxiety. I am. Matter of fact, I'm getting close to the end of it. I thought you might be interested in my experience, because anxiety has become almost a fad. I think what she's saying is that it's so widespread that it is easy to lean toward that diagnosis if you don't uncover anything physiologically at its base. Now, anxiety at its base is physiological, but we're talking about identifiable causal factors, like saying those kinds of big words. My general practitioner and the cardiologist that I was sent to misdiagnosed me for 5 years as being anxious. when actually I had a pheochromocytoma. It's kind of a tumor growing on my adrenal gland. An adrenal gland is, something that can put out adrenaline, and that can be at the basis of a lot of anxious symptoms that kept pumping more and more adrenaline into my system. I had 6 non-blockage heart attacks before they figured it out. Okay, let me stop there. The vast majority of the time when people have these anxiety reactions, especially the intense ones, there isn't an identifiable dangerous physical cause. But there can be. Now, there's a long list of physiological conditions, and, of course, an overactive thyroid is one of them. Now, this is not to scare people, and I don't know her circumstances or her situation, and I don't know how and why it slipped by the physicians. Most of the time, when they give you a clean bill of health, it's a clean bill of health. The annoying thing is, if they had just listened to my symptoms, they would have figured it out back 5 years ago when the palpitations started. In the beginning, I would have them every 4 months or so, and always at night when you're frequently shifting positions, something that now I understand triggers the pheochromocytoma. Now, when you have palpitations that are periodic like that, now I'm not a practicing physician, but it's more likely they would look at that as something that is idiopathic, meaning to the person, and it's somewhat typical. All right, I've had them; they come and go. Many people have them. It's very common to have palpitations. They're caused by all kinds of things. They can be caused by coffee. They can cause a lack of sleep. They can be caused by chronic worrying, stress. Okay. The attacks would last about 40 minutes. Okay, these are at night now. They gave me, and I love trying to pronounce all these, clopidogrel, okay, as a sublingual tablet under the tongue. Hope it would shorten the attacks. I didn't take them after a while because I wasn't aware of feeling all that anxious, and the medication didn't help. Twice I was given monitors that showed nothing concerning. Okay, so they're chasing this now. They're not poo-pooing it. Even when I would have an attack, now I'm assuming she's talking about an attack of anxiety. When a medical professional took my EKG, one did happen when I was in the hospital, when I was there for cardio rehab after my first heart attack. They didn't look remarkable. Now she's saying this all should have suggested to them looking into something different than anxiety. It sounds like they were looking into it. They couldn't uncover it, which is not always that unusual, although I'm really hesitant to say something like that because a lot of people go to the emergency room after a panic attack and they get a clean bill of health from the ED docs. Yeah, and then they say, yeah, but they missed it. They're not reassured that it was some kind of panic episode caused by a lot of other things without a threat to their physical well-being. I've had a few who come into my office and say they missed it. I'm still having it, still having these panic attacks, so therefore there is something wrong with my body, and because of that, they're not finding it. Now, this is what's happening here. Now, my personal experience, and as well as just kind of doing research into the book, is that this is an unusual situation here, but I picked it out because it's going to bring up some good points, which I'm going to run out of time before I get to the break. I started feeling chest pain at my workout class, intense cardio with weights, which had never happened before. Cardiologist told me it wasn't my heart. Okay, and I don't know how the cardiologist based that. I have no idea. A month later, it got worse. The second heart attack prompted them to give me a beta blocker. Okay, by this time they had me measuring my blood pressure and EKG with the cardio app, and once again, she says, if they would have paid attention that my only symptom during an attack was a blood pressure reading over 200. Now, that's a sign of this particular tumor. They would have diagnosed it much earlier. Anywho, thank the Lord my situation was finally diagnosed because they couldn't really figure out what was wrong. And now that the tumor is gone, I'm myself again. Okay, so they did finally chase it. They just didn't discover it. Medicine is an imperfect science. I had a lady come into my office one time, and she had a severe pain in her leg, upper leg. And she had gone through a series of diagnostic tests. They could find nothing. So they sent her to me because they thought she was kind of an anxious type, a fretful type, and she needed some therapy. We talked for a while. I saw her for a few sessions. And I said, I'd like to suggest you chase this further. Because it's very unusual to have a symptom like this in a place right smack in the middle of your thigh. More often than not, these things are stomach-related, intestine-related, chest-related. They're more diffuse. They're more vague. She said, no, it's right there. So tragically, she chased it. She chased it with her specialist, and they did all kinds of further tests. And this poor woman, her name was Evelyn. I remember seeing her in the hospital. It was bone cancer. So initially they didn't find it, which is not unusual, by the way. When somebody's getting diagnosed and they're looking to see what the cause of a particular symptom or symptom cluster is, they rule out the more general stuff. They rule out the more likely stuff. But if it is something unusual or something not often found in a certain age group or a certain population, they don't immediately go there. It's a journey, and it sounds like that's what happened here. Let's see. The job that I had before children could be very stress-producing. My youngest child was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 5, and you and your wife know what that's like. Yes, I have a type 1 diabetes son. Now, this is interesting here. This is a more common root cause of a particular anxiety reaction and of a particular place. I was trapped in an elevator when I was in adolescence, and I experienced, now this is frightening, one racing down to the ground floor as if it were broken in my 20s. And here's what she said, this is unusual. But I have never been afraid to get into an elevator. Now that would send most people saying, I want no part of an elevator. It never occurred to me not to get into an elevator after those experiences. Wow, this dear lady had a whole lot of reason for all kinds of anxiety fears to prop up. Then she says this, in my 30s I was in a plane that had to prep for a crash landing because the landing gear wouldn't come up. And it never occurred to me to get into a plane after that. So I wish these doctors who were convinced I must be anxious that there was something going on. And that is interesting, too. When she had situations that would clearly have indicated that, in fact, this would be a person who would react. She didn't. I wonder if she told him that. Thanks so much for joining me here on The Doctor Is In this Eat First Monday. Dr. Ray Grandy program comes to you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, That's probably the 5 days you assumed it was. There's a little bit of redundancy there. Is my Latin teacher, Mr. Rametta, who is a vocabulary genius, used to say superfluous pleonasm. This program is a co-production of the Ave Maria Radio Network in Ann Arbor and EWTN, Gold Catholic Radio Network. Dr. Ray, my mother and I raised my nephew since he was 1.5 years old. He's now 13. Now, I'm going to assume that our writer here lives with Mom. I became Catholic 3 years ago, and he was just confirmed last month. We made changes in our home. I assume she's meaning different things that would more reflect the direction they're heading with their beliefs. He is now homeschooled. These changes have pushed him to the edge. All right, let me stop there. I have a book called Family Faith Under Fire. There were common situations that you run into because you embrace your faith. One of the questions was from a mother who had a 15 and a 13-year-old. The mom converted to Catholicism a few years earlier after pretty much a neglectful approach towards any kind of religion. And she kind of admitted to going to church on Christmas, maybe Easter, but for the most part, the kids were just raised culturally. Well, now Mom is getting closer and closer to our Lord and His church, and this 15 and 13-year-old are looking at her like, what is going on with our mother? She was perfectly fine before she got this religion thing. Which really translates into meaning she was raising us according to the way we want to be raised, as the culture says, at the pace the culture says, and at the immoral exposure that the culture says. That's what they were really saying. And she's sitting there pushing back against me. What do? Now, I can't answer all that here. You're going to have to go by the book if you want to get that answer. But this is similar what it sounds like. Our writer is saying that as she became more faith-filled, her nephew is saying, whoa, you're not letting me watch that anymore? But I was just right in line to get a smartphone. Now what are you doing? Why are you delaying that? And these games I want to play? Well, what's wrong with them? So he's pushing back. Well, last October, I'm back to the letter now, he called his mother. And she is now getting ready to take him to New York in May. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if when she said they raised him, did they have custody of him? Or did Mom basically say, here, you raise him, and there was no custody change involved, and now she's hearing what he's saying about this place that he's now living in that has really turned on him. Some alien took control of his aunt's body and saying, get me out of here. Or is she saying, you can come and visit? Okay, I don't know, and that would be helpful if I knew. I told my nephew that he had the ability to stop it and to change his mind to stay. But he says he leaves it up to me. Okay, I think that clears it up a little bit. Stay meaning birth mom wants her son to live with her again, and she never did relinquish custody. Now here's where it turns. I'm tired of his disrespect. Okay, so the kid is a behavior problem for her now. Now, whether that's because he's 13, he's getting a little feistier, whether it's because he doesn't like her new way of doing things, and I don't know how much Grandma is agreeable to this, but apparently it's a unified front in the home, so he doesn't like these changes. And his attitude is, I got an option. I don't have to live here. I got someplace else. I talked about this factor in my adoption book, and I'm going to run up against the clock here, so I'll talk about it maybe after the clock, what happens when an adopted child knows about the birth parent, knows where the birth parent is, so that when they get upset with the adoptive parents, they can say, you know what? I'm going to go where it's better. I'm going to go where they understand me. I'm going to go where I'm loved. I don't have to put up with this. Now, the average kid who is not adopted, who's a bio kid, doesn't have that option. But in many cases, an adoptive kid does, and if he knows where that option is or who that option is, he may say, yeah, wait a minute. In this case, if birth mom didn't relinquish custody, she can probably push it. She can probably say, that's my kid, I want him back. And legally, they couldn't do anything about it. So I don't know exactly why our writer says she left it up to him. I'm tired of his disrespect. And I believe he should go either with his mother. But my friend says that a good Catholic would fight and not let him go to a place where he will not receive God. Help. It's tearing me apart. See, now I said because I really didn't know what to start out with, which is really a dumb way to start it. I could have said stalling for time. I think the key here is finding out how she can get better control of him. If he were not so difficult for her, which indicates in a lot of ways that she's probably not doing some of the things she could do to make him easier to live with, she wouldn't be so torn about whether he should stay or whether he should go. On one hand, she wants peace. On the other hand, she kind of implied that birth mom doesn't have any religion, and this young man is going to get raised the way birth mom says, which may parallel the culture, if not worse. So given all that, she's saying, I don't want to throw him into a situation where everything we've been trying to teach him the last few years is just going to get junked. But yet at the same time, how am I going to deal with this? After the break, I'm going to share with you a very similar situation my wife and I had when we adopted our two twins at age 4. What is it about music that is so cool? What is it about our brains, the way we're wired? Now, we have different tastes in music. I got that part. But there's something about music that is basically appealing to everyone. I think God put it there. God said, okay, I'm going to let you enjoy beauty. Some music isn't beautiful, of course, but for much of human history it was. We got into a lot of the vile stuff that reflects some of the moral direction in our culture. All right, let me just paraphrase this one again. Hold on, where did I put my phone? This is an e-person from a woman who she and her mother raised their nephew, her nephew, and this must be the grandson. Since he was 1.5, now 13. She became Catholic 3 years ago, and he was confirmed, but he didn't like this. They're kind of changing the way they're structuring their family, their rules. He's unhappy about this. Apparently, because of his unhappiness, he contacted his birth mom. Help! Get me out of this! This is horrible! I'm living in a monastery! Well, birth mom said, you can come live with me. Now, again, I don't know the legalities here. I don't know if they have custody, she has custody, and just essentially quietly let him live with them. I have no idea. But he now is kind of waffling. He's saying, I don't know if I should go or not. But he said, I'm going to leave it up to you, meaning Aunt. I'm going to leave it up to you, Aunt, if I go or not. She's saying, I'm sick of his disrespect. I'm sick of his resistance, his unruliness, And my response to that was, whoa, wait a minute now. He isn't just automatically this way. There's probably a lot you can do to cut back on a lot of this stuff. Almost always when somebody comes in with a 13-year-old and says, he's this way, there's a lot of things the parent can do to make him not be so much that way. So, she says, a friend said, you need to fight this and not let him go to a place where he will not receive God. So apparently, even though this wasn't said in the e-person, his birth mom really is living a very different life. Who knows whether it's morally safe, socially safe, behaviorally safe, drug-free, who knows? A lot of it's going to depend upon how ugly that situation appears to be. Now, that said, had a very similar situation in our own lives. We had 4 children, and their ages at the time were 6, 5, 3, and 1. I gave a talk to a local group of foster parents, along with the caseworkers there. During one of the breaks, I sat with the caseworkers, and they knew that we had adopted 4 children. And they were looking to place 2 children in an adoptive home. They were in foster care, had been in foster care for a couple of years, and they were looking to place them. And they asked if we would be interested. I guess. I talked to my wife about this, but I'm thinking, oh, man, 606, I ain't sure about this. But nevertheless, my wife put the pictures of the children on our refrigerator, and we told the kids, the 2 older ones anyway, that we're going to pray for these 2 children, that they find a good home. And that was the end of it. Thought, okay, all done. Not going to happen. A year went by. And I don't know the delay in the year. I have no idea. We were called. We were told we were the family of choice. And I remember when they called, they said, Dr. Grandy, you are the family of choice. And I didn't know who it was, and I remember thinking, family of choice for what? Big screen TV? Trip to Disney World? What's my choice here? He said, to adopt the blank twins. Oh, yo. I had trepidation. I was nervous. Okay, I knew these kids had a rough history. Birth mom had gotten into a lot of bad stuff. Birth dad, I think, had since passed away of a serious disease. Okay. Talked to my wife. Said, well, her words were, if not us, who? All right. Dive in the deep end of the pool. What the heck? I'll go take some more parenting talks so I don't have to do as much of this parenting thing at home, you know. I can UPS her things when she needs them. Well, it very quickly got complex. We visited the children a number of times, and we found out that foster dad was an atheist, essentially, that his 19-year-old son had died unexpectedly, seriously unexpectedly. And he really wanted no part of a God who would allow that to happen. So the kids were going to be raised with no religion whatsoever. At least at that point, it appeared to be that way. The foster parents fought the adoption, sued the agency. We were on the news, although our identities were not revealed. And every night we'd turn the TV on and we'd watch the local news giving an update on the supposed injustice done to these foster parents. Well, it was much more complicated than that. They had not been chosen to adopt these children for a number of reasons. The agency said no. We were in a position kind of like this writer was. We knew that if we backed out, the children would return to a home where, at least at that point, God was not given any attention. Or could they stay with us, where they would be raised in a home that believes in God and believes in Christ. And that was one of our motivating reasons to fight this. We could have easily said, you know what, forget this. We don't want to go through this. It lasted like 2 months. There were legalities involved and just a mess. And at one point, the several of their people, not their staff. They had a huge staffing, and the staffing decided to place the children with us because that was in the child's best interest. But they were afraid of the lawsuit. And the state representatives got involved. It was a mess. And the children had been with us now 2 or 3 months. The sense for us was this: we believe this was a much better place for them, and we would be essentially saying you're gonna go to a place where they may love you in their own way, but you're certainly not going to be raised, at least at this point. Maybe they'll change down the road, but at this point, in any kind of God view. So we fought it. Now, I think that is the choice facing this woman here. Now, the difference was our kids were 4, and they were pretty unsocialized. I mean, they were difficult. They were far more difficult than the 4 children that we already had. Far more. Lots of behavior issues, which wasn't hard to deal with because they were 4. Now, this kid's 13. But nevertheless, the principles are the same. If she can alter her parenting somewhat, and I'm going to tell her that she can listen to this on the Ave Maria Radio.net archives. She's not listening now. Sorry about the I hate that. I hate that. She can dramatically improve, I think, his conduct with her, and she won't feel quite so torn. Dr. Ray.
I know not to ask any questions. Don't worry. I understand.
All the advice, none of the bills. Come in. The doctor is in.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
Food for the Journey, Sister Ann Shields.
Acts chapter 12. The Word of God continued to spread and grow. There were in the church at Antioch prophets and teachers. And while they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them." So they went forth by the Holy Spirit, proclaimed the word of God in the Jewish synagogues. God is leading them. The Holy Spirit is showing them who should go. Read the whole Acts of the Apostles. Sit down and just read it and look at God's action helping the early church. The same grace and the same gifts are available to us, brothers and sisters. And all the graces that the early disciples received, all the ways in which they were equipped to begin the preaching of the gospel, we are given to continue the preaching of the gospel, and sometimes to preach the gospel for the first time, because fewer and fewer people in the United States know who God is. We will be given the same gifts and the same graces, those that are necessary and tailored to our times and our needs, if we are people of faith who come to the source and receiving from the very source of grace what you need.
Food for the Journey with Sister Ann Shields can be now heard on the audio archives page at AveMariaRadio.net.
In case you can't see this, I am playing the jug. I'm doing the jug bass. Last e-person on this program today, Dr. Ray, I was watching your Living Right with Dr. Ray program on Saturday evening. But at the beginning of the program, you were talking... Oh, okay, she's addressing this like it's not to me, but it's like to one of my people. I told her I'm getting so big, my people got people. She said, at the beginning, Dr. Ray was talking about one of his daughters who chewed on her clothes when she was about 2 years old. That's true. When we adopted Mary, one of the first things she did was rip her clothes. She ripped them with a knife. She ripped them with the scissors. So as we made those out of reach, she decided, well, I got teeth. Teeth will do it. And it amazed me how she found where the seams were. He said an elderly lady gave him $10 one day at church to get the kids some new clothes. That's right, she did. She came over and she said, buy the kids some clothes. And my wife, when I told her afterwards, I said, look, honey, that sweet lady gave us $10. She goes, Ray, give it back. I go, well, no. Hey, who am I to deny her an act of charity, huh? Well, then I said, on an upcoming Christmas Eve, another elderly lady put 3 $100 bills in my hand. And I said they felt like 3 cigarettes, so 3 $100 bills. And I mentioned on the program, severely with tongue planted in cheek, I said, hey, if that lady ever tries to give us $10 again, I'm going to give it back to her, cheapskate. Man, my price tag just went up, $300. Okay, so here's where it confused our listener. Bless her heart. The next statement was very confusing. It sounded like he said something to the effect that he did not need the $10 now that he received the $100. Well, that's kind of right. I was joking about it. I said, I don't want that crummy $10. I got people giving me a lot more than that. Cheapskate. Now, I hope it was pretty obvious that I was teasing. She says, could you please clarify this? As something did not seem correct with that statement. Well, if I was serious, Catherine, it wasn't correct. It was actually pretty nasty if I was serious. But I was teasing. Because that same lady gave us $10 3 times. I didn't say that on the TV show. Yeah, because apparently she noticed that Mary's clothes, and it wasn't the same outfit either. Mary was going after not only her clothes, but the other kids' clothes. And we weren't going to replace them. And by the way, we were a trend step ahead of cool clothes. I mean, these young adolescents, they all wear torn clothes. Well, at that time, torn clothes weren't yet in. I wasn't going to let them wear that to church anyway, but in this situation, and these were just tiny little rips, There weren't anything that was gaping holes, weren't immodest, inappropriate, but they were torn, and you could notice it. I mean, if you walked, there was a seam tear, down there at the calf level or something. And so apparently this sweet lady gave us the $10. Now, the one problem I had, and I said this on the TV show, what if she attended a different Mass next time around? I mean, typically we went to 8 o'clock Mass. But if we couldn't make 8, if we went to 11, and she went to 8, we wouldn't be there to collect our $10. So I suggested to my wife that I leave envelopes in her seat where she said she always sat in the same seat. What's nice about the older people, they got their seats. So what if I leave an envelope? I have them printed out, Gurendi Clothes Fund. My wife, she's so stiff sometimes. She just didn't agree with that. And I thought, well, she doesn't have to give the full $10. A couple bucks here, a couple bucks there. Or if she wants to become a monthly donor, that would have been nice. Catholic radio stations live by monthly donors. And the worst thing we could have done, and well, my wife kind of, we got Mary some new clothes that weren't torn. And we punished Mary for tearing her clothes. We took privileges away. That stopped that. So then we didn't get the $10 anymore. I thought, man, what are we doing here, honey? It's just so it was short-lived. It was short-lived. All right, time is up. Your time is up. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. My producer man is Andrew Kruchek. Again, he produces this show over there at Ave Maria Radio in Ann Arbor, Domino Farms. And, of course, the wonderful people at EWTN, Global Catholic Radio Network, always there. Made many, many good friends through both places. something I never would have anticipated 20-plus years ago when I was in the secular media world, and you just didn't form those kind of friendships. Not like I have with the folks at Ave and at EWTN. Okay, all done. Thank you so much. Please feel free to write me with your e-persons. Try to address as many of them as I can. And thank you so very, very much. Walk with God and give your $10 to Him.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.